Let's talk about Iowa. We know CD hates Iowa. Okay. But I mean, there's some silver lining there for you. They lost a lot of guys on this team. Riley Moss, Jack Campbell, Lucas Van Ness, all NFL guys. All very, very, very good players. Two of those guys went in the top 31 the first round. Riley Moss, I believe, was a
Fourth round guy.
yeah, he might have been an early day 3 guy, but regardless, he was really freaking good for them last year. Again, this defense was absolutely unbelievable. I mean, if you saw that bowl game against Kentucky when it was the battle of the absolute dunderheads at quarterback, uh, you saw a very, very good defense take advantage of a silly, silly quarterback there at Kentucky. Um, they do return some guys though on that defense. Deontay Craig, who was very productive for them last year. Let's not beat around the bush. He was very, very productive for them last year. And Cooper DeJean, nickel, corner, safety, whatever you want to play him. Yeah, he's going to be the best defensive back on that field, likely on that day. So, what are your thoughts on this Iowa team? The over/under is at 8.5. What are your
You know,
thoughts?
I'll put away my Minnesota bias and my feelings toward Iowa because I really do think this team is really good. I think that they should be Big Ten West title favorites, and even though Wisconsin kind of is, but I think 8.5 is honestly a good line. If it was at 8, I'd think about going over. But 8.5, I don't. 9-3 is going to be really tough to do, especially with that offense. More so the unknowns. On paper, it's a much better offense, right? Last year they were in the 120s of offensive efficiency. If they can get into the 70s, like wow, that could be a huge win with a defense that's still as productive as it was last year, even with all those losses. I think the biggest loss is Jack Campbell. What he did, I mean, I know linebacker is the forgotten position. It's the running back of the defense where you can hide him. None of these guys make huge impacts. What he did in the middle of the defense there changed games, changed total schemes from teams, especially in the Big Ten West. I mean, he was such a monster. You saw that early pick that the Detroit Lions took on him. So I don't know. Cade McNamara, I don't know. We'll see about him. I think he's very fine. He's definitely upgrade than Spencer Petras and whoever has been there before. Is he going to be a CJ Beathard type guy? I don't know, but he's got some more talent, I think, than they've had the past couple of years. Even though they lose some wide receivers to the transfer portal, Arlen Bruce, Keegan Johnson are gone, but Caleb Brown comes in. I mean, that was a huge addition that they got. He was going to see some kind of snaps for Ohio State this year in that loaded room of wide receivers. And then Luke Lackey, I think his name is, at tight end, and then Eric Ali are just both studs. They're going to run 2 tight end sets. If they can stay healthy, I mean, Nico Ragni is fine. You know, Seth Anderson might be a player too for that wide receiver room, but we'll see. The best offensive player is Caleb Johnson. He's really, really good at running back. I think he's so underrated because of what he has to face in his boxes that he sees all the time last year. Really powerful runner. Love the way he moves. And then their O-line is fine. I mean, they returned 4 or 5 guys. They're typically pretty good there. You have optimism to improve it because everyone's coming back. And they also have depth, which they haven't really had in the past couple of years, which is important because you know how injuries can add up, especially on the offensive line, or we can see disaster set in for some of these teams if their O-line does get banged up.
I agree. Although, look, for the sake of the show today, I'm going to take the over. I'm going to say it's a play, but I will say any sort of betting advice, if you're betting these preseason overs or unders, it's very good to already have your overs kind of locked in for the most parts before this time because this line definitely moved from 8 to 8.5, right? A lot of times overs get bet on more. And then by the end of in May, even early June, that's when you take your overs, right? You take your unders in July and August. All right. But I think this team is phenomenal. I think it's really good. Yeah, you lose some big time names, but Joe Evans is pretty serviceable at end. He's been there, done that, you know. But
Well,
Deontay
he's gonna be
Craig,
top 10. Sorry, he's gonna be probably top 10 all time in sacks there.
yeah,
Which for Iowa with all those pass rushers they've had in the past, it's pretty good.
Deontay Craig is wildly productive. I think he's really, really good. Like for the number of snaps that he got last year, he was, you could say, arguably as productive, quote unquote, as Van Ness. I don't know that he's necessarily a better player. That's yet to be
There's
seen.
reason Van Ness couldn't crack the lineup because those
Yeah.
guys were good in front of him. I
Well,
know they don't play
yeah.
underclassmen. I
Look,
know
Van
Van Ness
Ness,
is a stud. He'll be a
he
better
ended
pro
up,
than he was in college, but
he ended up getting more snaps than a lot of those guys, though, because late in the game, you're like, how do you keep this kid off the field? But uh, I don't know. I think, look, Nick Jackson from Virginia, he's fine, right? Like, I don't know. Linebacker, look, there's really, really good linebacker play like Jack Campbell, and then sometimes you just got to have good enough linebacker play. I mean, just need a vacuum there, linebacker, something that, Nick Jackson gets a lot of tackles. There he is. Boom. They returned to pretty much everyone on the D line except Van Ness. So I'm a big fan. Like Phil Parker himself, defensive coordinator at Iowa, has said that this defense could be potentially as good as it was last year, even with all of that talent missing. And if Phil Parker is saying that, I'm gonna ride the wagon. Of course, like if you actually get this offense right, was in the bottom 10 in the country in offensive production this year. If you could turn that, what we'll say, 120th ranked offense in the country, if you could make that the 90th best offense in the country, the 75th best offense in the country, now you're talking about actually winning like 10 games, 9 games, 10 games.
And having a chance to beat whoever is coming out of the East there.
Yeah, I think, look, getting Minnesota at home is huge. I think that's gigantic. I think this team could match up really well against Wisconsin. I think that'll be an issue team for Wisconsin. And they get Illinois at home, which is another big deal. I mean, their draw from the East, you get Penn State, you get Rutgers, you get Michigan State. That's not crazy, right? Penn State will be a really tough team to beat. And I don't anticipate them beating Penn State, but they don't need to. They don't need to.
I think that's going to be the whiteout game too for Iowa, which is tough.
Yeah. So yeah, sure. Let's chalk it up as a loss, but then you lose. Then you can lose up to 2 games because I don't anticipate Iowa losing to Iowa State, but
you never know. That's a great rivalry game.
It's a great rivalry game.
Such a close game.
Yeah. So, but like, okay, yeah. Even say, I think they can get out of the Big Ten only losing 1 or 2 games. Big Ten West play. I mean, so I don't know. That's just me. I'm all over it. Pretty high. Their secondary is not bad either. Again, Cooper DeJean is a dog, right? Jamari Harris was injured last year. He might be back. Better than ever. Who knows? Xavier Nwankpa. He's playing safety. Yeah, he's a stud. He's the highest rated defensive back that Phil Parker's ever recruited. So like that says a lot. Now he hasn't seen the field a whole lot because they've had a loaded secondary, but he'll see the field next year. He will see the field.
Well, right? And what's nice about that is, so Kayvon Merriweather is the guy that he replaces, who was an All-American for them. He was a monster. But his partner is going to be Quinn Schultz, who's been at Iowa forever. He's a former walk-on guy. So it's the total opposite. It's like this walk-on 5th-year senior guy that's in Quinn Schultz, super experienced dude, with this 5-star, year 2 true sophomore guy that's crazy talented. So Quinn Schultz going to be there to make sure he's lined up, make sure he's just can able to just fly around the field, which he will do. He's ready to do that. I don't think there's going to be much of a step off. Losing Riley Moss, losing Merriweather, that secondary will still be loaded.
Yeah, and the offensive line, they get snaps, which is, depending on the situation, snaps can be the most important stat for an offensive lineman for me when I'm looking at evaluating for the next season. Now, they're pretty terrible in pass protection last year. I think they were like a bottom 20 team in pass protection last year, grades, but run blocking, obviously, every year they just dominate that, right? But if they get a little bit better in that pass pro, and some of that's quarterback, right? Getting your guys in the right spot, not running a play action every single time you pass the ball, right? Giving your quarterback really awkward drops and your offensive lineman putting them in kind of rough spots there every single time you drop back for pass. But yeah, I really like this team. I'm going to play the over in terms of the show, but I'm not going to recommend that people take the over because of the vig and the value.
Yeah, I'll say Cade McNamara. That does scare me as a Minnesota fan that he did choose to come there because he's a really, really intelligent guy. He had other options. I know he wasn't the best player at Michigan, but he was very serviceable Power 5 quarterback. The fact that he chose to go to Iowa kind of scares me because I think I don't know. He did his homework as soon as he got on campus. I think a lot of things changed offensively for them. They were able to bring in a guy like Caleb Brown, and he brought in Eric Gall from Michigan with him too. The team is pretty talented on offense, and they finally have a quarterback to do it. It'll be up to Brian Ferentz, so, who's so bad, to get the most out of him and to get it up to the 70s range, which is all we're asking for, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, if they score 24 points a game this year, they're winning 9 games. So I'm willing to bet on that.